This episode of Marijuana Today Daily is brought to you by our friends over at Gateway Cannabis Incubator, the top marijuana startup accelerator and venture fund. Learn more about how they help entrepreneurs bring their cannabis startup dreams to life over at gtwy.co. That's spelled gtwy.co. Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Thursday, October 26th, 2017, and you're tuned in to episode 360 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. Our top story of the day is the new Gallup poll released yesterday showing that a record high percentage of Americans are in favor of legal marijuana. Gallup has been asking respondents the same question, quote, do you think the use of marijuana should be made legal or not, unquote, since 1969, and this year 64% said yes, they did think marijuana should be made legal. For a bit of context, just 12% thought the same in 1969 when the question was first asked. To age myself a bit, in 1997, when I first got involved in marijuana activism, that level had improved a little bit to around 25%. As Tom Angel is reporting over at Forbes, this year's survey is also remarkable for the fact that, for the first time, a majority of Republicans think cannabis should be legal, ticking just over the half mark at 51%. Recently, I reported on news out of New Zealand that the nation's voters would be casting ballots on the question of legalizing adult-use marijuana in 2020. There's more cannabis news breaking from the country as marijuana.com is reporting that the new Labor-led government is saying that they will work to legalize medical marijuana nationwide by the beginning of February. Member of Parliament and Green Party health spokesperson Julie Ann Gentner told marijuana.com that she has a proposed bill legalizing medical marijuana, which she hopes would be passed by the new incoming government. Swing over to John Hilt's piece for the full read on this one. As always, we have all the news we cover linked to on our website at mjtodaydaily.com and on our Twitter account at mjtodaydaily. Our final top story of the day brings us out to Massachusetts, where the state's Cannabis Control Commission is considering a plan to allow for the transportation of state legal marijuana from the mainland to island communities like Martha's Vineyard to take place via airplane. We've covered this issue a number of times in various places where the federal jurisdiction on air and waterways complicates the question of moving state legal cannabis around to islands. As the Globe is reporting, though, there's a really interesting angle to the story, which we can actually thank Tom Angel for. Earlier this month, I covered one of Tom's stories highlighting an obscure federal regulation that seemingly legalized the transportation in federal airspace of products legal in states. Someone on the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission saw Tom's piece and brought it up for full consideration. My bet would be our friend Shalene Title, a now dormant regular on our weekly show Marijuana Today, and one of the members of the commission. While it's still far from clear that the regulation would actually open up an illegal path for cannabis to be flown to island communities, the details and particulars of how it could work are being studied now, so we'll report back as the question resolves. Those are our top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz it in headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, Gateway Cannabis Incubator, the top marijuana startup accelerator and venture fund in the business. When you apply to and are accepted into Gateway's program as an entrepreneur, you get $50,000 in startup funding in exchange for just 5% of your company, meaning you're walking in right away with $1 million idea. But beyond that, Gateway helps with all the other things that entrepreneurs have to worry about, like legal stuff, HR concerns, and bookkeeping and accounting. They have a wide network of industry pros who are on call to answer questions and provide guidance to Gateway's entrepreneurial class. If you have a killer startup idea for the legal cannabis industry and want to throw your hat into the Gateway circle, then swing over to gtwy.co to learn more about how their program works. That's gtwy.co. All right, time for the Blitz. The country of Jamaica just granted its first 2 legal marijuana business licenses, with one going to a cultivation company and another to one specializing in processing cannabis oil. Despite its reputation for being a cannabis-friendly country, the actual laws regarding marijuana in Jamaica have been fairly harsh. Recognizing both the folly in continuing to pursue a traditional war on marijuana, as well as the economic benefits that come with cannabis tourism, the nation has made moves in recent years to embrace more progressive policy. Swing over to Mary Jane for more on this one. Rhode Island's Legislative Commission, tasked with studying the merits of marijuana legalization, met for the first time yesterday in the state capital of Providence. The committee's 19 members have spent their first session planning out a schedule for hearing expert witness testimony and for gathering data from states like Colorado and Washington. They also elected their co-chairs, tapping state representatives Dennis Canario and Joshua Miller. Mr. Miller is a well-known proponent of adult use legalization, so that's good news to hear. The commission will submit a final report to the state legislature sometime in March. Canada's provincial Quebec government just announced plans to open up 20 to 40 adult use dispensaries next year that will be overseen and managed by the government-owned nonprofit that handles alcohol sales in the province. A separate nonprofit organization will be set up for the cannabis side of things, with any profits made to be funneled back into government drug prevention programs. Earlier this week, the Maryland Medical Cannabis Commission approved 2 business licenses to applicants who are being investigated by the state for possible conflicts of interest involving the reviewers who scored their applications. After finding that there was no direct evidence of any kind of undue influence in the application process, cultivation and processing licenses were given to the company Doctor's Orders and one for processing to Temescal Wellness. This is a good one to open up in full. Ben Adlin over at Leafly picked up on a story out of Arizona about some legal confusion over what exactly is marijuana, cannabis, and cannabis extracts. According to Ben's piece, an old Arizona law dating from the 1950s legally separates marijuana from cannabis, even though the terms are interchangeable, defining cannabis as a narcotic drug derived from marijuana resin. That quirk in state law has been used by state prosecutors and law enforcement to harass medical patients. This is a bit of a complicated story, so yet another good one to read in full. Former NBA Commissioner David Stern has come out in favor of allowing NBA players to use marijuana. Currently, the league forbids players to use a number of drugs, with cannabis being one of them. In a documentary produced by former NBA player Al Harrington, Mr. Stern, who led the NBA for 30 years and who was never really a friend of cannabis when he was in power, said, quote, "I'm now at the point where, personally, I think marijuana should probably be removed from the ban list. I think there is universal agreement that marijuana for medical purposes should be completely legal." Unquote. And finally for today, Florida's Orlando Weekly has a good reminder for all the parents out there in these days leading up to Halloween. No one is going to give your kids pot candy. This is a story that pops up every Halloween season as police and other law enforcement officials use it as a cheap bit of press to warn parents of nefarious stoners looking to sneak cannabis candy to your kids while trick-or-treating. And as the Orlando Weekly so nicely puts it, that's never actually happened and is not likely to ever. Marijuana candy is expensive, and most people don't want to get kids high. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again tomorrow morning with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our Twitter account at mjtodaydaily and visit our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Thanks to our sponsor, Gateway Cannabis Incubator, and to all of our awesome patron listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the lesser ranks of the patron listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in, starting your day with marijuana today.
One take, Shay. One take.